Hello and welcome to a special show from In the Money Media. I say special, we do them every week during the ITM Horseplayers Tour, looking at races that are going to be part of this horseplayers.com feeder on Fridays. You probably know the drill by now. The house cut goes to charity, supporting Breeders Cup Charities, a wealth of great causes throughout the industry. And then you got two ways to win a Breeders Cup betting challenge seat. That's worth $10,000. You can finish in the top 10%. And you move on to another contest on Saturday where a seat will be awarded, or you finish in the top 4 any week during our tour feeder season. You enter our playoffs. Our playoffs will award another $10,000 BCBC seat at no added cost to you. Peter Thomas Fornatale coming to you. Slightly different angle here in my dad's old office here in my mom's place in Port Washington, not far from the new Belmont location. But it's kind of cool. I got to move one of the racing posters back there maybe. But very happy to be joined, as I've been fortunate to be for the last month throughout my California sojourn, and hopefully for as many of these as they'll do with me throughout the season, a face that should be familiar. He's TV's Matt Bernier, founding partner of the DRF Players podcast way back in the day. How are things, Matt?
A peek behind the curtain. We've typically done these Wednesday mornings. We're doing this late Tuesday night. If I have an intruder come in, the way of my oldest daughter, she may make an appearance. She's wanting to come out these time of night here as a 4-year-old. She likes to push the limits. So look, anything can happen. It's 9 o'clock on a Tuesday.
Child and pet interruptions have been a part of the DRF / In the Money Players podcast from day one. So we welcome such interruptions should they come, though we don't want anybody's sleep schedule to get messed up.
Sleep is of the highest priorities, especially after last night. Mom's away on work, so things are a little bit on their ear for the next few days with Dad being at the helm.
One of my a lasting friendship of mine, a character who's come up on various ITM shows over the years as the Ice Cream Man. We became friends because he was astonished that I, as a young father way back then, this was 13 years ago, I guess, because Perrin was in the potted plant phase and the little bassinet, and he was just shocked. He was like, "Wait, you can have children and still play the horses?" Matt Bernier, you too are living proof that this is the case. Let's talk about these races on Friday. You hinted off air that you have some strong opinions. I'm curious to get to them. We don't have the official lineup yet as we record Tuesday night, but I'd be very surprised if any of these last 4 races are not in the contest. We start off with a starter allowance, goes as race number 7 at 4:34 Eastern. Critically, in my reading of the race, we're going 1 1/8 miles in this group on the dirt. But let me ask you this. Is this one of the races where you have a strong opinion?
It is, and I should probably put the caveat out there. They're strong opinions. They're going to be kind of tough from a contest standpoint. I think from a gambling standpoint, though, I have every intention, assuming the odds are right, to be making plays here. And this is one of them. And you can tell me if I am making this far, far too elementary, making this case for Coach Cronin way too obvious. This is a starter allowance optional claimer. This horse fits the bill by getting in with that $16,000 claimer non-2 life last August. Bob Hess Jr., if by sort of looking up stats is correct, hasn't had a starter at Saratoga in the better part of 13 years. The fact that this horse was in California, fits this bill, 1.8 miles seemingly, I know they've only gone 2 turns with this runner a few times, but really has been making up ground in all of them with the exception of that Bertrando last time against Calbreds at Los Al. But it's worth noting Shea Brennan came right back and very nearly defeated journalism. And ironically, we talked about him last weekend. We know all the news that came out now. I don't know that the 5-2 is going to happen. I have a funny feeling this horse is down to even money when all is said and done. But when you get an outfit that does something like this for a very specific condition, I just can't help but think this horse is ready to run a hole in the wind.
He's one of the ones for sure. I guess my concerns were twofold. One, you noted about the distance. You're right. There's no real reason to think he won't get the distance, but I was holding it in my mind as an open question. I was also just trying. He should get a perfect trip. There's a world in which he gets a perfect trip. I guess I was just worried that there were a couple in here who might put pressure on him. I thought that the 6 runner Calibrate might be a little bit closer than what the time form pace projector had. I also thought that Secured Landing after the gate to wire win at the claiming level last time might go. Look, if I'm given 3 picks, he's one of them, but I don't think it's as simple as him I'll make my case for my other two, and you can tell me if you can see the point, or if I'm just making you want to double down on your Coach Cronin conviction. I just kept coming back to the distance here and looking at these 9 furlong races and trying to find one I thought wanted the distance, and I thought I found that with the 5 runner Sharp Spark in here, and that opinion got stronger rewatching that last race and remembering that day when I just thought it was very tough circumstances. He was wide throughout. That race was a merry-go-round. That day was very kind to speed. Time for him agreed with my assessment visually. And then his only other 9 furlong start produced one of his fastest races. He doesn't necessarily look as fast as these. I thought maybe the distance could be an equalizer. And then Calibrate, I wanted to give a chance. This is a horse who looks like he's just better on dirt, and he had some graded, decent form going 9 furlongs back in the day. I figured I could maybe lock this one up with 3, 5, and 6. But the 5 runner to me was one, especially for contest purposes, I thought could maybe get a little bit lost and be a halfway decent price. Are you seeing any of that if you squint?
Very much so, because you touch on the distance, and I think the thing that it goes both ways, right? Sharp Spark has shown a willingness and an ability to handle the 9 furlongs, and I know Calibrate's win last time came at the mile, but you touched on the sort of back class that he has. Those were in much longer races. Just because you can get a mile and an eighth, if you're more long-winded than that, I think you can actually come up. It might be sharp for you in some instances. Maybe it's not a perfect comp here because he did just win at 8 furlongs, but I think of those two, I would much rather, from a contest standpoint, take a shot with the 5.
Yeah.
Of the short numbers, I would just much rather have the Hess horse than the Diodoro runner. Not to say the Calibrate can't win. He's certainly capable of getting it done. I mean, you tell me, am I like way too much drinking the Kool-Aid on the idea that, like, especially when it's, these are the things that I love to look for, that they're so atypical. We often talk about it with horses kind of outrunning conditioners. When someone does something like this, like, I don't know, Bob Hess has run in Florida before and he's run in Kentucky a lot, but to not have run here in more than a decade, unless my data is incorrect, specifically for a horse that just fits this condition, like, I don't know, man. Whenever I see that sort of thing, I'm like, there is as much intent here as possible.
I get it. The intent can lead to that overwhelming intuition. And when a horse fits the conditions to a T like that, it's something you should pay attention to. As should the fact that, I gave one reading of the race where maybe there's a bunch of other speed. There's another reading of the race where Coach Cronin really just has an absolutely perfect trip. So I have no problem with pressing that one. Personally, I need those others. I'm just pulling up some data to see if I can confirm or deny what you said. Yeah, I mean, he certainly hasn't had a runner at Saratoga in the last 5 years, and it just makes me feel old because I remember it was probably closer to maybe, I hate to say it, but based on your research, 15 years ago that he had a regular string up there. It didn't seem that long ago to me, but what do I know? Big signs of intent there. Few interesting ideas. I think we use those 3. We're getting alive from the first leg of this pick 4 to the second. Of course, in contest, you could potentially use all 3 in the ITM Horseplayer Tour, where you are allowed up to 3. But let's proceed to race number 8, where we've got a dirt allowance going 6 furlongs for 3 and up fillies and mares, New York breds. This was a race where another race where there were 3 that I wanted to mention, and I might use 3 across 3 entries. I thought that the 6 runner, Lady Rose, looked like a really good candidate for the turn back, based on looking at the pace lines for the previous races. Been tailing off just a bit on the sectionals, going longer, and the form speaks for itself. It's good. So I thought the 6 Lady Rose made sense. More for horizontals, the 8 runner, Lightning Strike, I wanted. A horse that I thought ran better than it looked last time, didn't break great, rushed up through fast fractions. Didn't think the inside was great that day, and that form is also working out well with 2 run backs and a winner and a second. This horse on debut settled and finished, and I think that if Lightning Strike manages to do that here, she'll win. It is also possible. This is another race where I can see a scenario where it is a bit of a burn up, and I do want some other runners. And another one I'll mention for the closer scenario, the 5 K-Gun in this spot, I thought was a little bit interesting. I like how she closed to get up through not particularly fast fractions last time. And this race could be run to suit. Mostly the 6, a little bit 8, a little bit 5. Is your pick within those numbers, or you want to bring somebody else to the party?
I will throw another number at you. I really like the 4, Liberty's Secret, in here. I
Yeah.
just thought the maiden win was so professional, and that was her first start in a long time. We hadn't seen her since the end of September last year at Aqueduct. She was part of the pace that day. It melted, and then she went away. So I think you've got built-in excuses there. And she took money. It was a field of 9. It was on that 4th of July weekend up at Saratoga to get that down to 5-2 off that kind of a layoff. And I know Pat Quick doesn't have a ton of horses, but knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
This horse never looked like a loser. She was in a great spot down on the inside. Dylan Davis got her out. I almost feel like the short comment of 5-6 wide upper probably makes it sound a little bit sexier than it really was. I mean, all he did was just guide her out to the clear, and she blew the doors off the field. I see no reason why she can't come right back and do that again. I know the pace that day was on the more moderate side, but I agreed with your assessment. I think there's a handful in here that want to go. So I would just think naturally she's probably going to get outrun a little bit down the backside. And if that's the case, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. She's shown a willingness to sit and finish. Maybe she does go close to that 6-1. I loved everything about the tape with the 4. I'm willing to take her right back here against winners.
She'd have been my 4th pick if I gave one. I think I felt like that was too many to give. But the other positive there is that Garden of Grace, who was 4th, I think, in that race back on July 5th, came back to win. So the form looks decent. Definitely had a little bit of finish. First time against winners. Sometimes I have a reflexive negative reaction to that, but hey, sometimes they win, and she's certainly capable of it. Few ideas for you there in the 8th before we get to the featured race of the day, the Grade 2 Amsterdam Stakes for these 3-year-old sprinters. And I'll just go first here because I'm fairly boring in a race without the true heavyweights of the division. The 7-runner Obliteration looks really, really good. This is a favorite I think I want to be with, away from Englishman. Great tactical speed, little bit of finish, drawn perfectly for this spot. I will mention, if for contest purposes, if you're just allergic to playing chalk, I think you could make a case for the 2 Local Knowledge. I love that debut run, closing well against the flow. And you could maybe say that the horse was a little bit too close to the pace last time. Maybe a return to the hold-up tactics could outrun the odds. But this is a horse that also could take, at 4-1 or something into the teeth of Obliteration. I wouldn't be terribly interested. But again, if you're allergic to chalk, you want a little bit of a mid-price, the 2. But I just thought it was Obliteration's race to lose. Is it that simple, Matt?
I think it probably is. And, you said getting away from the heavyweights. I listened to you and Nick Tamero the other day, and I agree. You saw what happened to Bing Crosby last weekend. We saw what happened with Built at Saratoga. I think these 3-year-olds are really good. And Obliteration, maybe I'm going a step too far. I think any other year, we'd look at him and say, boy, he could be, he could be a real threat come Breeders' Cup time for the sprint as a 3-year-old. And he may be no better than 3rd as far as the boys are concerned this year with the 3-year-olds. I think he's really cool. The fact that he's been off the board 1 time in 10 starts, in that game of the Breeders' Cup in the turf sprint, the juvenile turf sprint. I mean, there's no shame in that. He's won 4 races with 4 different riders. He's taken his show on the road. He's done a little bit of everything. And the other thing that I'm really heartened by is maybe that's a bridge too far to say I'm heartened by this. It's 6.5 furlongs. But you look at his career, I'm not really convinced that beyond 6 is his forte. I think he is a crack 3/4 type, where maybe you look at Englishman. Maybe there's a scenario in which he's more of a 7/8 type. Crude Velocity, we know they kick the tires on going out to 2 turns with him. Obliteration, I think he's way the horse to beat. That's Captain Obvious. He's probably 3-5 in this race when all is said and done. I was curious your take on the pace, because if I'm not mistaken, Timeform projected this to be a slow pace. And when I went through it, I thought there were a lot that wanted to take up a similar portion of the running, and they all wanted to be forward. If this thing were to melt, maybe you could give Gilded Bandit a little bit of a look before going out for Mott's Barn, who he's a terrible gate horse. He's going to drop out the back and make one run. He definitely needs some help. I think, if I'm being brutally honest, I don't think he beats Obliteration. But to your point, if you just really are averse to taking 60 cents on the dollar, maybe you take a shot with a horse like this and just hope that chaos ensues.
He could pay more to place, right,
Yeah.
than Obliteration pays win in place. So there's that too. But I think his best use is as an exacta partner. Because I think you're right. There's a lot of runners with similar running styles. I had it more as an even pace. And Timeform does say favors front runners. I'm not sure about that. But I think this could be a case where Obliteration just burns off all the other speed.
Yeah.
And it's an absolutely perfect scenario for a runner like the 4 Gilded Bandit to come running and pick up second. And this is a case where sometimes I'll also play key all closer, where because sometimes the closer, if they just get too far back or somebody sticks on, your opinion is almost right. But rather than go down with the ship 7-4, have a little 7-all 4, or you can thin out that all 2 to just contenders as well. But sometimes I'll do it weighted where I have something with all of them in there, almost like a weird kind of win show parlay, as it were.
Yeah. Do you have, like I said, I'm kind of speaking highly of this horse. Theoretically, let's say he goes out there and runs big again on Friday and earns something close to that 104. Maybe he even takes another step forward. He was only a nose behind Crude Velocity in the Woody Stevens. I know they've got a lot to find from Englishman, but let's also be honest, as impressive as Englishman has been, that's the only giant fig that he's got, right? He's got the 115, and I think he's got 3 like mid 90s. I'm not telling you that Obliteration is going to be the best of the 3-year-old sprinters, but I don't think he's as far behind Englishman as that Woody Stevens would suggest. That I'll leave it at that.
I can't disagree. I mean, in going into that race, I look like an idiot now, and Mikey P's laughing when he listens to this because all he could tell me was how the real Englishman was going to show up and bury them, and I was like, yeah. And of course, he was more than right, and I was wrong. But if I liked him more going into that, you're not really supposed to let one result completely flip everything on its head. You got to respect your priors. You don't want to just be married to your priors. Obviously, there's a much bigger chance that Englishman is the best 3-year-old sprinter, but I'm not going to go and say that there's a 0% chance that a horse like Obliteration could rise. And as for, where they go next, I mean, yeah, I assume they would tilt at the Jerkins on the Travers undercard. You're not going to be afraid. You're not going to be afraid of one. You're not supposed to be afraid of one horse, in a spot like that. And I don't think there's another super obvious place for him. So yeah, I think if he's impressive here, they'll go there, and it'll be a fun little rematch in what annually is one of my favorite races of the summer. That Alan Jerkins, a really cool race, potentially stallion making race with the grade 1 status and all the associated prestige. Let's move on to the nightcap, though, my friend. We've got $40,000 claiming fillies to wrap things up. We're going the flying 5.5 in this one. When it comes to, well, it won't be the last race of the ITM Horseplayer Tour contest. So that's not going to tell us how to get paid. But in terms of all the late picks at Saratoga, it matters. Who's going to win it?
Well, there's a difference. I don't know how you typically go about handicapping, but I'll go through the paper first, and then I'll go through and start watching tape and try to find, little knickknacks here and there. And when I just looked at the paper, I thought Emerald Ember kind of stood out as one that I really wanted to get stuck into off the claim now for the Count Tomasi barn. And then I went back and watched the replay, and I just wasn't all that thrilled. I didn't think it was bad, but it was not anything that wowed me. And it made me want to do a little bit more research. I think a lot of people are going to go to the race that Scorch comes out of and say that's the runner that you want, just simply because close to the pace was still finding at the end, wasn't completely embarrassed. I don't have a real argument there. But of the horses out of that heat, I think I want the 4, Rakita, just because I didn't think it was a great trip. I thought this horse was kind of bounced around toward the back, never really had clean run, and maybe you just kind of clunked along at the end. But I get the impression there's more there. The flip side is, boy, she's had a lot of cracks at it, and she just hasn't really been able to get on through. She's probably going to offer the best price of the 2 horses that I'll throw out there, the 4. If not the 4, I'm going to go back to Asmussen. I think the 9 from scratch, a lot of the recent form looks god-awful. And 1 for 19, you're starting to make a lot of excuses, 9 times second or third. But the turf sprints really aren't bad on this horse's page. So I would probably lean 9 in here. But if you wanted a bigger price, I'm not opposed to the 4.
I'm with you with the 9 from scratch. And I think the form just comes into a lot better focus when you just look at those turf sprinting tries. I don't know. Time Form actually has her loose. I'm not sure if it'll quite develop like that, but she's going to get a good trip, clean and clear from the outside, and could be on the lead. The turf sprint races are good. I love the draw. And I just think there's a lot of arrows pointing in this direction. And maybe you get a little bit better than should be priced based on an ugly overall career box line and a couple ugly dirt lines that I'm just not too worried about back in this situation. The other one that I'll throw in there for consideration, I mean, all the ones you mentioned can win too. And in exotics, I'd love to have them all covered. But the 5 dozen roses, we talked about looking at tape. I thought that was a nice looking move into the fastest part of the race last time. And this is one that I thought would be nicely suited to the 5.5, and third time off the bench, maybe a career best effort. It might take that to win, but this is a horse I'm thinking should be in that 5-6 to 1 range, and I wouldn't want knocking me out of picks. I had it 9-2, 9-4 for Matt to close things out at Saratoga. This contest lineup, we don't know what it's going to be exactly. Should be a mix of races from Saratoga and Del Mar, which is always fun. Of course, the eyes of the racing world also going to be looking down towards Virginia this weekend, where we've got the Arlington Million card. I don't think either of us have done the 100% job yet, but I did want to at least bring up the Arlington Million because we'd had some very positive conversations about Burnham Square, Matt, and what his ceiling might be in terms of, an American turf horse. This is a real litmus test for him. What are you thinking about his chances coming in? What do you think about him as an individual?
Well, I think anyone that has seen or heard me for a while has known how much a fan I am of this horse. He may not be the sexiest thing when you see him walk by in the ring or anything like that, but he's just all racehorse. I love that he's a gelding. I love that Ian Wilkes is his trainer. And Ian has already thrown out names like John Henry, and the idea that, we want to see him run till he's 9, and I love that. We don't
the new
really
Gold Phoenix.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I was going to say, let's not. So speaking of John Henry, might be GFP. With Burnham Square, though, I think this is, as much as I love him, this is really when you're going to find out where he fits. Because with all due respect to the horses that he's run against in Kentucky, and they've all been at the longer distances, they pale in comparison to this group. And I think this is a good group. I don't think it's an exceptional group, but it is absolutely the best bunch that he's ever run against on the turf. So whether it's test score, whether it's integration, you and I chatted beforehand, integration, maybe a little chicken-hearted, doesn't want to completely seal the deal when the chips are down, but he shows up and runs his race more often than not. Test score is one that you have to respect. You have to think that motion's going to have him sitting on tilt. And then you've got the winner of this race from last year in Fort Washington. I wouldn't completely dismiss him, but I make no bones about it. I think Burnham Square is a proper talent. I don't know about the 1.25 miles. I don't see why it would preclude him from running well. He may just be better at 12. But this is when you're going to find out. This is when the rubber meets the road, because if he can't hack it here, that makes me sort of recalibrate my thoughts of him going forward. If he can, and he does what I think he's absolutely capable of, then, I'm already flying the flag. It would be, all systems go. Just send for him.
It's going to be fascinating. I was looking at that too. And if you just looked at the last 3 races, you might say, is the 1.25 miles going to be too sharp? But the fact that he has those big graded dirt wins from earlier in his career tells me, unless he's lost the speed to compete at the 10, he should have it. You demonstrate a skill, you own it. The old fantasy baseball mantra of Ron Chandler. I think it applies to horse racing too. If you can win those races, you probably have the speed to not get caught flat-footed against this group. It's a terrific running of this Arlington Million, and if he wins, I think we can finally have that conversation. How's he going to look at the Breeders' Cup turf?
And I will say as well, you go through this field, and I can't stress enough, this is a good group of horses put together. If the morning line is to be believed, 5-2, I would have a hard time saying no to that, just because his recent races, if you're just going off of those, they are better than everyone else. And if you're telling me that I'm going to, the morning line pegs him at 28% to win this race, I think it's a hell of a lot more than that, just based on the raw dope. So I'm very excited to see what he does. Again, even win, lose, or draw, I will always be the president of the fan club. And I hope he gets through this test on Saturday.
Yeah, 5-2 would be great. I do worry that because he has the figure advantage and the win streak, that it's going to be lower than that. It's not going to be odds on, though. I think, you might be looking at 6-4, 8-5 situation.
Yeah, I was going to say 7-5. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd be happy with that still?
It's pushing it. Like if I'm being greedy, 5-2, I think a reasonable number would probably be 9-5, 2-1. 7-5, I think is fair. I don't know that I'm, to steal one of Jonathan's lines, cutting you in line to make the bet at 7-5. But yeah, I think that's probably where he should be. But then again, that's also to be saying that that's a fair bit of disrespect in a way to a horse like Test Score, who is a
Right.
proven Grade One commodity. Say what you will, again, integration. He is a few results away from being thought of and talked about entirely differently than he is now. Keep him go 2 years ago. We talked about him like he may be the next great Shug turf horse, and it's just kind of been fine.
Is he the one? I'm going to look before I say it. I think is he the one who in the Pegasus one year? Yeah, he was
Mhm.
like bet to even money against freaking Warm Heart.
6-5 against Warm Heart. I
That's
mean,
how good they thought he was.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, and to be fair, his first three starts, man, if you watched any of those, you were like, this
yeah,
could be point of entry all over again.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and he's one of those weird horses too, Pete, that just on the numbers, if you just look at the paper, I mean, he runs basically 100 every time, or pretty damn close to it. He just didn't win a lot against the good horses.
My like knee jerk when I was writing my at the races.com analysis of the race was, oh, does he really class up at grade one? And I think the knee jerk is no. But you look at the actual races and you see some of the trips he's gotten and how close he's come. I think it's harsh. He'll have a big prize with his name on it. I mean, at 4-1, I wouldn't want anything to do with him. But
Yeah.
I think he could get lost and be 8-10-1, in which case, if nothing else, he becomes a really interesting exacta and trifecta partner for Burnham Square.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it depends on how hard they go for Test Score, right? Because if suddenly the top of the market with the top two are, let's just hypothetically say 7-5 and 5-2, well, then everybody else can't help but float from there. And I mean, if somehow integration was 4-1, everybody else is double digits, right? I mean, that's you just have too much market share in those 2 to 3 horses. I'm interested in the Dresden Rowe line. I know he hasn't done anything wrong in those starts recently for Todd. I don't know. I wouldn't bet him with your money at 7-2.
Yeah.
Mercanti's got good races in the past. I don't know if he's quite the same horse that he once was, but he ran really well in the Wise Dan last time behind Laganos, who is just razor sharp at this point. And yeah, I think so much of it just boils down to, and then Fort Washington, I can't help but think he's lost a little bit on the fastball. I don't think he's quite the same horse that he was when he won this race last year, but yeah, I think it's time. This is when you're going to find out, and hopefully he acquits himself well. Burnham Square goes to Kentucky Downs for his final sort of prep, and then all systems go for the Breeders' Cup. And I don't know who's going to come here from Europe. That's always the unknown. But as far as American hopes are concerned, if he runs the way he has lately, I put him right there with the up to the marks of the world, the bricks and mortars of the world, are some of our better recent turf horses here in the States. I think, assuming he acquits himself the way I think he will, I think he belongs in that conversation.
We're going to have so much more chat about the Breeders' Cup Turf, some of those horses who may be shipping over. We've had coverage on the site all week. I should have been touting this more. InTheMoneyPodcast.com. Our man, Stephen Bonnick, been writing up Glorious Goodwood. We've got some Breeders' Cup Win and You're in action over there. But of course, we pride ourselves on giving some of the best info out there about these European shippers with the help of people like Stephen Bonnick, like Michael Adolphson, like Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today. There, I had to say it. Andrew Harmon, too, has been helping us out on that side of things. Another fantastic pro punter. So keep it locked. In the Money Media YouTube channel. Subscribe for great info all the way through the Breeders' Cup. Matt, if you'll indulge me, let's do this again next week.
Absolutely. You got it, buddy.
Good stuff. Go to horseplayers.com, get involved in this $20 feeder on Fridays, and may you win all your photos.